Welcome back, Dan Hardy.
Cheers, mate. Good to be back.
So, we talked a lot about the background of Hardy's and the business, and I got a lot of feedback. Guys are quite keen and really interested in your take on business in general as well. So that was awesome. I think guys appreciated not just hearing from Dan Hardy in regards to Hardy Engineering, but just from a business person who's been successful in New Zealand, because those stories are good to hear as well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I got a few emails as well. Um, yeah, which was really nice. Like we sort of discussed, it's the first time that anyone's asked me that sort of question about the acumen side of the business. So I've got a few one-liners prepared to throw in there.
So tonight, though, I thought we would talk about what probably a lot of people might have thought the last show would have mainly been about, and that is your guns.
And the journey.
And the journey, yeah. So I'm not a gunsmith, and I've worked with engineers, but I'm not an engineer, so you're probably going to have to put up with some pretty badly phrased questions,
Yeah.
maybe, or just understanding questions, but that's fine. That's when people, a lot of non-gunsmiths would admit it, that we're all in the same boat, so it's my job to be that person.
Yeah, fine.
But yeah, we talked about last time, you always had the plan to provide a firearm provider system, and working towards that as well. Now, people at this point will know about the hybrid. They should know about Project X by now. It's coming, it's maybe one of the least best kept secrets in the industry. A few people knew about it and were, just like, oh,
yeah,
can we get one of those?
We actually, the first few Project X's actually were in customers' hands before we released the rifle.
before it existed.
Yeah, before it existed. Yeah,
it's all right.
Which is good.
Man, you need feedback. There's got to be that feedback loop.
Absolutely.
But if we go back one step, so we're going to talk about the hybrid first, and then how the journey to Project X as well. But my understanding is, I never saw it, but this is not the first action that you've ever designed or built, is it?
No, it's not, and it's yeah. I could crack straight into one-liners now about that actually, but I'll ease into it. So what we did, it was more or less at the same time when we were developing barrels, or after we'd released the barrels, we started to go down that track, like we spoke about toward the end there, where we were saying we were pushing the barrels and building this network, this distributor network, international distributor network. And we sort of went, right, let's see how big we can go with this, how much product can we get out there. But for people that know me will and they'll understand that my patience can be a little thin. So here we are trying to grow this big thing and build this big distributor network and sell all these barrels. And at the time we were working, and we still do, should I say, we were working with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, as a lot of exporters do. And we were discussing different bits and pieces and where to next and all this sort of stuff. And I was talking to them about the frustrations of developing this distributor network and how we go about selling more product, getting more product out there. And it's the penny sort of dropped. I said, well, the best way for us to sell a lot of barrels is to sell them to an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer. So the likes of your larger gun makers, predominantly American based, and supply them with barrels for their guns. I said it's incredibly challenging when you're based in New Zealand. You're not a third or fourth generation gun maker. So the easiest way to supply an OEM is to become the OEM.
Right.
And just make the damn guns yourself.
Yep.
So that's what sort of led on to it. Like I said, these things were all in stages. We had a journey that we were following to reach our end goal. And I sort of realized that once we'd grown our distributor network and reached that, not its limit of exploitation, but toward hitting that sort of sales wall, that's when we said, okay, it's time that we look at considering the next step.
Yep.
So at that point in time, we said, okay, well, let's look at developing a rifle action. And back then when we did it, we didn't have enough expertise in the facility. We didn't have the capital to throw at it. So inadvertently, what we did was we produced a Remington clone.
Right.
Which is fine. And there's a lot of Remington clones out there that are really successful, so on, so on, so on. Everyone knows about that. But after we did it and we're building guns and we're selling guns and all that good stuff, I just took a good old-fashioned look inside and went, this is not hardy rifle engineering. Why is it, how are we going to get picked up by some big brand, big distributor in the States or wherever selling a product that they can get on any shop corner?
Mm.
So I sort of, just we inadvertently, not long after I came to this realization that it certainly wasn't the direction that I wanted to go down, I shut the whole thing down.
Yeah.
You know, we'd invested several $100,000 into plant, which I just sold it, got rid of it. And that was the end of that. So I mean, this is not a 6-month period of time.
No. It's, yeah.
You know, it's considerably longer. But here we go. I've got a one-liner for you here. So when any person in business or us in that situation or someone who's potentially going to start a business, they come, the old fear and risk is always in their head. And one of the big things that we fear is failure. And the word shouldn't really exist. It by definition, it doesn't actually exist. Because if you set out to do something, failure insinuates that you're not going to take anything away from the situation. Mm. You've gained nothing. But if you set out to achieve an objective of any description, you're either going to achieve it, happy days, or you're going to learn.
Yep.
No matter which way you skin it. And it's the same as making a decision. You make a good decision, you make a bad decision. The key to success is to making that decision. You're either going to achieve your objective or you're going to learn. So that's why I'm always encouraging people to put themselves out there and give it a go and really have a crack, because there is no such thing as failure. So that's what that sort of mentality gives me the confidence and gave me the confidence to just go, this ain't me. I'm not happy. I'm not comfortable. Out.
Yep.
That's kind of the end of that story.
Yeah, well, no, that's nice bookend. Okay, so then the next question, which almost sounds like, I mean, you've learnt the lessons, but is there any of the DNA of that action in the hybrid or the Project X, or when the next time came around, it was time to start again, or not? I know lessons learned, but is there anything in there, or was it starting from scratch again?
It was more or less starting from scratch completely again. Some of the features are kind of there, as in the hybrid and Project X are kind of like a twin lug action in the general sense of the term. There's a lug on the left, there's lugs on the left, lugs on the right. This action was the same, lug on the left, lug on the right. So not a tri-lug or a quad. So that remains the same, and that's you use screws to hold it into the stock. that's still there.
Made of metal.
Yeah. But the original Hardy action we built, we set the footprint for the trigger hanger as a Remington, so we could use Remington aftermarket triggers. We kept that because we didn't want to get into manufacturing our own triggers just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that was not the danger, but yeah, if you went everything was proprietary, sure, you tie everybody else into having to buy all your system, but there's a lot of triggers out there for Remingtons. People have their preferences for triggers, and suddenly, again, now you're not just making the action of the rifle, and it's the triggers, and it's all these other specialist bits as well that are out there already.
Yeah, and we're hugely consumer focused as well. So the worst thing that we could do would be to provide like if you look at the Tika T3, how that trigger attaches, just with that single screw, wicked design, and like so easy to incorporate into an action. But it really does limit the choices that we can offer. So we offer the Hybrid and the Project X with a trigger tech special. So it's adjustable from 1 pound to 3.5 pound. It's black, so it fits in. It's an amazing trigger. And that's what I use in my guns, happy as. But like you said, you've got a lot of guys with preferences. You've got the more old school guys who've shot high-end guns with the dual trigger system in them. So you still get people wanting dual. You get a lot of defense guys that are quite used to a two-stage trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a lot of the PRS guys, a lot of the comp shooters now. We're seeing an influx more and more of those guys who want to go to a two-stage trigger as well. That's bloody Ian's influence to a degree, I reckon.
Yeah,
he's gone full two-stage. So yeah, with that Remington trigger hanger footprint, we have more options.
Yeah. So okay, so you get to the point you're like, right, it's time to have a look at this the system again, or the providing a rifle. Where do you start? I mean, you've got the barrels. Do you start? Is it based around the action then the stock? Like, what's the design process? Where's the driver for it?
So the start point is the action, is we term it the heart of the firearm. So for obvious reasons. So that's what we want to do. We want to develop the heart of the firearm, and we understand after a bit of soul searching that the product that we want to produce needs to be something that is the term that your New Zealand Trade and Enterprise and those other organisations that and Callaghan Innovation Group, and that they like to use the term disruptive.
Yep.
Fantastic term. So you can, if especially for New Zealanders, we've got so many amazing innovative thinkers in this country, and the ability to create product that is disruptive, and we've done it for over the years and years and years. So you make something so different, so radical, and so out of place in the market that when you throw it into the market, it disrupts the market.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately the design process. It's got to be disruptive. It has to be a disruptive product. Hey, we specialize in that. So bring it on. So basically, what we do from there is we just sort of get together, pen and paper. What cool stuff can we try and stuff into this very small, technically engineered piece of equipment? So we come up with a list of all of the sort of the coolest features and the trending features, and we actually did a survey that we threw out on our website and on social media. I think it was 2014 or something like that. Run it with SurveyMonkey and stuff, if that's even still exists. And and it was all the what do you guys want to see? What do you want to see? What do our consumers want to see from us? And if we were to develop a rifle action, I think is what we said. And
hypothetically,
yeah, and it was just all the cool stuff, integral Picatinny rail, integral recoil, spiral fluted bolt, a few other sort of basic, more conventional features like that. Free floating bolt head. A few other bits and pieces, and then we kept a lot of the real nerdy stuff sort of close to our chest. We didn't want to say, this is what we're gonna, angle people into making choices based off our selection in the survey.
Yeah.
So then we sort of got a bit. So we got this market feedback of what people sort of roughly wanted to see, and it was we had our theories as well. Obviously, the stuff that we like, because ultimately we're big consumers of our own product. So the whole integral side of life is just makes so much sense to me. You know, the less parts in a receiver that your scope touches and what touches your stock, that, you know, the better. So integral Picatinny rail, integral Recoil, like, they were just absolute no-brainers. And initially when we started...
So, sorry to interrupt you, but
right,
just also to explain to people, when you have those bits that are loose or move, well, not loose is not the right term, but what's the feature advantage benefit? We understand, I understand, you understand why you want that, but what does a person who's like, well, what difference does it make if I bolt them on pretty tightly? I put those pick rails on tight. What's the issue?
Yeah, I mean, and you did right. I mean, a lot of guys will put their Picatinny rail on nice and firm, and they'll use the right adhesives, and for a very, very extended period of time, everything will be absolutely fine. But I tell you, one of the killers is that those adhesives, they don't last forever. They do have a shelf life in place. They can degrade, especially when you keep throwing the latest and greatest cleaning product at them, starts to degrade them. The next thing you know, you've got an hour-long quad bike, you know, mission to get deeper into a block, and that the slowly degradation of the adhesives followed up with consistent vibration, that can really work a well-mounted Picatinny rail loose. So it's still a fantastic system, but our feature, integral Picatinny rail, the benefit is peace of mind. You know?
Yeah, because this is a thing as well, though it would suck, but if something came, and it has, and there is great stories of certain things coming loose on my guns in the middle of competitions, but it's a comp, we can live with it, I can get the kit out and I can fix it. If you're halfway through your potentially once in a lifetime trip down into Fjordland or something like that, and your rail comes loose, that's a bit of an issue, and it's bound to finally happen when you least want it to happen. So have them integrated, meaning that it's just basically the same piece of metal. It literally can't happen. It's one thing that cannot happen.
It cannot happen. And if you did manage to peel your Picatinny rail off the top of a hybrid receiver, I think the hunting trip would be the least of your concerns by that point. Yeah. That's for sure. And same sort of thing with the recoil lug. You know, recoil lug has a massive impact on how a rifle is bedded. And free-floating recoil lugs, like on some systems, they can flex inside the receiver to a wee bit under recoil. That may seem fine at the time. They may seem firm and situation, no change. But over time and repeated recoil, and you will see removable recoil lugs with burrs occurring where it is getting thinner at the top as opposed to the bottom. Not such an issue with a Remington style one where it's sandwiched between the receiver face and the barrel. They can't move. But we just eliminate both. And as a result of that, we ended up with we're getting quite nerdy now. So
that's right. I'll keep you within parameters, Dan.
Yeah, just steer me. If I start to sort of switch off and get into numbers, then just...
If you see the 1,000-yard stares, my brain's just going, oh, just like, hang on, whoa, go back. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
But with the hybrid, with the integral recoil lug, that length of your action can be longer and still fit into the same stock. I'm trying to explain this right. So if you imagine a Remington action and then you've got a big recoil lug on the end of it, that's doing nothing but spinning, sitting on your barrel to control recoil. But if you incorporate that or make that part of a monolithic receiver, that's your receiver's physically longer as a solid piece as it would be with the Remington being the two piece, the receiver and the recoil lug.
Yep.
Yeah. So then that means you've got extra length for thread for the barrel to screw into. So you've got a longer barrel tenon. And I sort of explain it to people like this, and I'll go into more detail as to how the hybrid's set up. But if you can imagine you've got a barrel that is 24 inches long, and you held the chamber end of it with your 2 fingers and your thumb, it's going to feel heavy, right? It is going to put a lot of torque and a lot of pressure on your fingers. But if you hold it like that and have that whole shank in there, all of a sudden you've got a lot more of stability over that barrel. Your rifle action is going to respond just the same. So if your rifle action is hanging on to what is inside a Remington, 17, 18 millimeters of thread, compared to what is in a hybrid, which is actually a twin support system, it makes a huge difference. So just in line with that, with the hybrid and the Project X, we're actually a receiver inside a receiver. For those who are familiar with the system, we have a barrel extension that screws onto the back of the barrel, and that has your locking lugs inside it, and that slides in and out for the hybrid, and that is pressed and fixed in place for the Project X, or one similar. So when we look at the barrel extension and the barrel, the tenon length is 25 millimeters, and it's large in diameter. This is, man, I'm starting to go deep here, but I'll try and behave.
You're all good. Yeah. You're all good.
So
we're talking to guys who like looking at their kestrels and figuring out, Coriolis effects and stuff. It's all right, man. They'll be good.
Okay. So we've got a 25 millimeter thread going into this barrel extension. That is, and like I said, compared to a Remington, which is around 18 millimeters of thread, you're talking a huge amount of additional thread inside the barrel extension. But then we take it a step further and we actually slide that into the receiver.
Okay.
We slide 52 millimeters of barrel extension into the receiver.
Yeah.
So you've got an over length thread, and then it's clamped by over 2 inches of material. So then you think about that, and then you think about the size of the barrel, the diameter of the barrel over the chamber. So our thread is larger than, I use Remington because that's often considered a bit of an industry standard for a full-sized action. Our thread is larger than a Remington, and it's finer. So being finer plays a role as well, because the root diameter of the thread is further away from your chamber if you run a finer thread.
Okay. Yep.
Coarser thread, the thread pitch is deeper. Ours is little and fine, so it stays further away from the chamber. So coarse threads and big chambers like your Lapuas and your Normas, you reach pressure early. So we stay miles away from that chamber. We are a huge amount of thread, and then we shroud it with the receiver. So we've got a huge amount of barrel supported by the receiver. So things like that are some of the reasons why the hybrids shoot so ridiculously well, and they make life easy for the consumer. Now, the next question is, how do we get, if you get a hybrid that is more or a Project X, sort of like a hunting setup, so like the lightweight version, so carbon barrel, carbon stock, so on. That bear gun's 6.5 pounds, which is the same weight as a Tikka T3X, stainless synthetic, thin little barrel, small receiver, plastic stock.
Yep. So
I've just said that our tenon thread is larger than a Remington. A Tikka is considerably smaller. They run a barrel diameter, an outer major diameter of 29 mil. Our thread is 30, is bigger than that. Yep. So our thread alone. So our barrel is considerably fatter. So where is the weight difference? Where is that? How do we make the hybrid so damn light? And it comes down to the receiver itself. And that was another design aspect that we discussed when we were talking about creating a disruptive product. So before we get into the material specification for that, we decided, okay, we want to make the receiver really, really light. And we need to ask ourselves, how do we achieve this? So first of all, lightweight materials are typically considered softer and not suitable for firearms due to the heat, pressure, so on and so on. That's, firing forces that are involved. So, okay, well, how do we mitigate that and make a lightweight action? So it's relatively straightforward, and I've already mentioned it, and it goes by way of the barrel extension. So all your firing forces are controlled by the bolt head and barrel extension, not by the receiver. Where in a conventional bolt gun, the bolt head locks into the receiver, and then all the force is between your chamber and bolt head, which then presses into the receiver. Where the hybrid and the Project X doesn't do that. Everything's controlled with the bolt head and barrel extension. So we no longer have any firing forces in regards to bolt thrust being applied to the receiver itself. So we've taken care of that. The next consideration is what's called primary extraction. So primary extraction, as you lift your bolt through its 90 degrees or 60 degrees of lift, there's opposing faces on the top of the bolt handle and the receiver, and when those two faces contact, it jolts the cartridge back from the chamber, and it just breaks that initial seal. It's usually done in the last sort of 5 to 10 degrees of bolt lift, quite a violent bashing together of cams that create a good hard amount of force, good firm bit of force to break that seal. So then if you've got a lighter weight material for your receiver, you cannot have this hardened steel bolt handle section bashing against such a dissimilar metal, because you'll get the metal on metal contact, it'll just wear out. So that was the other consideration. So we thought, well, how are we going to achieve this? And that's when it became a serious challenge. So all the stuff we could sort of nut out and work out, and we were relatively comfortable with what it is that we were talking about doing, until it came to primary extraction on a lightweight action material. So there are lots of ways of doing it, and one of them is to put a hardened insert into the receiver, so you maintain those two cam faces that are nice and hard. And I was just, I don't know, that didn't really sit well with me. And again, we were trying to make something truly disruptive. So what I did was, while thinking about all this sort of stuff, and I had this idea rolling around in my head for a while, when you look at some of the real early artillery guns, the breech block, the breech ring, threaded in. So they put a big, 100 and whatever millimeter shell inside the breech. The breech block rotates in place. Cartridge is detonated, unlock, swing open, so on and so on. So then the go there is that particular thread is known as a buttress thread. And it's a really, really old thread. You hardly hear about it, see about it. It has pretty much no applications in modern day engineering anymore. It may be someone out there may know from the oil and gas industry. Maybe there's a little bit of an application there. But yeah, next to nothing, because what it's designed to do is to have a huge amount of pressure in one direction.
Okay.
To take a huge amount of pressure in one direction only, and no pressure in the other. So you can imagine it's almost a flat thread on one half, and then an angle thread on the top half instead of two. Instead of a peak, it's more like that.
Gotcha.
I hope you enjoyed my interpretive dance on buttress threads. So that's what we looked at doing. So what you get with the buttress thread is that those nice flat shoulders and faces that contact each other to take a huge amount of force. That's literally what it's designed for. But of course, it's still a thread. So then, as you lift the bolt, you're actually unscrewing the breech, just the same as on the artillery guns.
Gotcha.
And that unscrewing motion gives you primary extraction. No cams bashing together, no violence. and you're also spreading your primary extraction forces out from as soon as you start lifting that bolt's coming back. It's spread out throughout the entire 90 degrees of bolt lift, so it's a much gentler, and you have a lot more mechanical advantage as far as horsepower goes lifting it. So you don't feel the, if you get a tight case, you lift your bolt up and some people are smacking away at it, and this gives you a much more gentle mechanical advantage.
As a flip, does it mean you just need to be aware of potential pressure signs for guys reloading because it extracts so well? You've lost a sticky bolt lift. I know it's it's just a thought that passed through me. Having had to deal with sticky bolt lifts where you have a trouble getting the bolt open, and at least then I know that I've put far too much powder in the case, essentially. Sorry, it's a weird diversion. I realize just how my brain works, but it's like your good engineering solution has almost meant that, we just need to be aware of other pressure signs if guys are loading for a hybrid, I guess.
Yeah,
for Project X.
And you did right, and that 100% is the case. I mean, you get the telltale extractor marks on the brass and ejector marks. Firstly ejector marks, and we've had them, some of the lower quality brass that's floating around. We've had it to the point where we've lifted the bolt handle up and it's pulled the cartridge back, but because the brass has expanded so far past its elastic limit, it literally just expands into the clearance that we've given it by lifting the bolt, and you still can't get the damn thing back. So we've loaded them right up to that point. We've loaded them up to the point where they're still extracting nicely, but the primer falls out when they land on the ground. So you do need to be careful with your reloading. But anyone that's thinking about taking on reloading should be following the rules, doing it sensibly.
Of course. And the bolt lift is not the only sign you should be looking for as well, but it's
yeah, all that good stuff.
So that way now you get to keep it. You don't have to put a different, not a dissimilar, but you don't have to put a harder metal in with that interface or anything. You can keep it all as one piece, essentially, or less different components going into it as well. So how then though are you getting it so light?
So that comes down to that large piece of material being the receiver.
Yeah,
and for the most part, for most conventional action designs, the reason they're made out of a heavy, high tensile material is just for those locking lugs up the front and that tiny little primary extraction cam. All the rest is completely unnecessary. So with the hybrid and the Project X, we've eliminated the need for the high pressure firing forces area. We've eliminated the need for the primary extraction cams. So what we want the receiver to actually do now is have it accept a magazine and have something to stick your scope on, and more or less that's it. So then we can look at all sorts of materials. In theory, we could make it out of plastic. But we would.
Everyone with a 3D printer's just got all wibbly on it.
Yeah. But because I mean it's a non-consequential part anymore.
Yeah, sure.
There
would be some. I mean, it's alignment between scope and everything else. But but I get your point. You suddenly don't need to have the hardest material on Earth and potentially the heaviest as well.
So the material that we selected, and it's one that we've got a huge amount of experience with, is an aluminium alloy called 7075T6. So it's a 7500 series aluminum or aluminium, predominantly prolific in the aircraft grade. We import it from Germany, and that's that. It starts off life as 3 meter long, 65 millimeter big ass billet, and then gets whittled away to a mere shadow of its former self. So that material has a specific gravity of, I'm going to get my math right here. Might have dug myself a hole, but I think it's something like 2.77 grams per cubic centimeter, where steel is about 8.8. So that those two figures are grossly different. So you can see that there's a huge amount of huge amount of difference in weight. So it's a lot lighter. So there you go. You've got this, the barrel at the business end over the chamber is full size. So it's a full, the industry standard is that inch and a quarter barrel shank diameter. Yet the rifle still only weighs 6.5 pounds if you wanted to.
Yep.
So that's huge for us, because that people underestimate the importance of that full size barrel over the chamber. That's where it's important. All of that pressure and all of that force that goes into when the pressure, when you reach that pressure spike or that pressure peak in your chamber, that sets up all sorts of weird and wonderful traveling nodes that travel through your barrel. And the bigger and badder your chamber end is, the better it is for accuracy, and the easier it is to tune, and the larger the easier it is to find accuracy nodes inside the barrel. That's a hot internal ballistics is something that I'm really passionate about, but we're not going there. Yeah.
Part 3, Part 4, Part 12 with internal ballistics with Dan.
Yeah.
One thing to go back to, because it's flavor of the year or whatever it was. Did titanium come into it when you were looking at potential materials for it? Because I know there's a few super lightweight actions out there where it's like titanium, it's space materials, it's the unobtainium. Was it a consideration, or what was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, I mean, titanium is a fantastic metal. It's incredibly, incredibly strong. This is where people get titanium mixed up. Titanium is incredibly, incredibly strong for its weight.
Okay. Yep.
But it's not incredibly, incredibly strong, full stop. It's also got a few really, really nasty habits. When it comes to machining it, for example, it's extremely challenging to machine. It's inherently expensive, and the biggest issue as far as rifle actions go is galling. So what it does is it's a really sticky material. So if you've got materials pressure on pressure, such as a rifle action, then you lift that bolt, that sliding force tends to it can really easily gall. So a lot of action manufacturers that are using titanium recommend putting like a really high pressure molybdenum or something like that grease on the locking lugs, just to make sure that things don't gall. So yeah, that's a massive design consideration. These specific gravity numbers have really gotten into my head, so I'm going to go right ahead and look them up as we talk.
So someone will probably, if you got it wrong, someone's going to email or message both of us. Dan actually got that number wrong in the 5th decimal place, and
it's not bad off the top of my head, because aluminium is
better of him. Yeah,
aluminium is correct. 2.7, 2.69, 2.73, somewhere around there. And what did I say? The other one we'll just put in steel. 7.85 up to 8. I'll be happy. I'm happy with that off the top of my head.
That works. You've passed that test.
Yeah,
that's good.
Nailed it. Yeah. So then we've got all these weird and wonderful ideas. That this is how we start designing something. A very long way of saying that we just write them all down, all the weird and wonderful things.
Yeah.
What else did we put in there?
Did you start initially with the idea of a hybrid, like a switch barrel? Was that always the intent, or was that one of the things, like, was that something that people suggested, or was it something you already went, you know what, I'd like to do a switch barrel?
It was on the cards, and we discussed it as a feature, but we didn't take it, to be honest, we didn't take it hugely seriously. It was something that it was like, yep, I'm not too concerned about that. We're sort of more thinking about some of the more complex matters. But we made the decision pretty quickly to go, no, we're 100% incorporating the switch gun design into it because of firearm sales in Europe. Because in some countries, instances, etc., you're only allowed to own a certain number of guns, but you can own unlimited barrels.
Yeah.
So that was
people in New Zealand, people overseas listening to us will appreciate that. People in New Zealand may not appreciate that. Without naming the names, but that's exactly it. You've got the one gun, you own the one gun, but you can switch the barrels out. I mean, other countries, every single barrel with a serial number on it gets registered to your name as well, or every single suppressor. The laws are different, and you thinking of an international market, you've got to think about that as well. But for me, while in New Zealand I don't have that as an issue, I've always liked the idea of the one set of ergonomics and the one trigger and the one everything else. So when I first heard of the switch barrel systems, I was like, that's why it appealed to me. And it was only later I found out, talking to some guys overseas, they're like, but it's also a law thing for us as well. So, but the reason I was asking, because it also ties in nicely with your shroud system. And was that a result of that? That's a result of deciding to have a switch barrel, or did you come up with a shroud idea and then that worked nicely into the switch barrel?
Yeah, we came up with the shroud idea first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
The barrel extension. Yep. So the lightweight receiver, barrel extension, that design, and then it was like, okay, what's the best way to incorporate this into a switch barrel thing?
Gotcha. Okay.
That it came about, and we were at early stages of design, so it was a very easy addition or final decision. So that was sort of the primary driver behind it, or the initial decision made behind it. Because we're no different than our clients out there when it comes to this gun. It takes a while to get your head around the value that you gain from having a switch gun. Especially the guys who are really active shooters. You sort of don't understand its possibilities until you start going, now this. So it is really awesome. So we say, and we always market it as you can shoot competitions, you can go hunting, heavy steel barrel if you want to 6.5 Creedmoor, shoot a PRS type event, switch it to a 300 short Magnum or whatever and go hunting. But it's so much more than that. So the guys who are really serious into their long range, or really serious into their competition, or just do a heap of shooting or do a heap of pest control, whatever your system is, you just bung a 2 to 3 barrel into it, and then you've got very cost-effective pest control, very cost-effective training, and so that's an amazing feature. And it's just like you said, is that beware of the man with only one gun. Same optic to look through, same trigger to press, same bolt manipulation, same stock to hold, same bipod to lay behind, and all that good stuff. And then you go, well, I shoot 6mm Creedmoor, for competitions or whatever. I'm up to 1,000 rounds through my barrel. Next season I want a new barrel. No worries. Okay, I'm going to buy the new barrel now. I'm going to do my load development, and then I'm going to put that barrel away. Now I'm going to just chuck my other one in that's flogged. I'm going to do a whole bunch of training with that, burn it out completely, no downtime, pull the barrel out, bung it in, and carry on.
Because when you're talking about the no downtime, that's also just to be, I'm pretty sure this is the case. So you were able to send out a replacement barrel without having to have the gun back to fit for it. So that means so guys understand this. Normally when you get a barrel switched out, well, you have to send the barrel off to the gunsmith, which even at the best of times means it's going to be away for weeks, if not a few months, just as it is right now, So none of that exists. You basically get the new barrel that turns up in the mail. And like you say, at the point where you're ready to swap over, well, that's it. It's done. It's ready. It's just, when people talk about this idea of a pre-fit barrel, well, that's the perfect pre-fit barrel, because it just is. It's good. It's going to be just a straight switch over.
Yeah. And you do it all yourself. No headspace gauges.
Yeah.
Nothing. And you literally can't get it wrong. If you get your bolt in and it closes, you've done it right.
Yeah, you can get it wrong. Like the first time I came across one, and I think I was trying to switch the barrels off without opening or closing the bolt. I forget which way it was, but yeah, and this is the old, let's have a look at a new system, not even think of reading the manual, and it's not
Oh
working.
no,
and
we don't
then,
have time for that nonsense.
No.
Yeah.
How much have we invested into the system? But I don't have time to read a manual. And
Yeah.
I know better than that. But yeah, it was saying, and we're like, what's going on here? And then whichever way it was, I think you fed back to the customers like, yeah, you idiots, you need to either open the bolt, close the bolt, whatever it is. And the guy's like, yeah, and it works perfectly. So it's like, okie dokie, yeah, cool, sweet.
Yeah, we would have been far more diplomatic than idiots. We would have
Depends
only insinuated.
Depends who the customer was and how well you know him, I suppose. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing that's really cool that is getting utilized quite a bit now is that, a guy says, well, I hunt with a 6.5 PRC and I want to shoot competitions with a 6mm Creedmoor. Fantastic, crack on. Now I want to shoot a 1 mile challenge, and I want a 300 Norma,
yep,
or something like that. What am I going to do? Do I need to get a new gun, or let's talk about building? I'm just like, well, just pump the brakes for a second. Do you need to magazine fed a 300 Norma when you're trying to shoot steel at a mile? Some people may disagree, but I don't think you really are going to be racking that bolt so fast.
Yeah.
So buy a 300 Norma barrel kit without the magazine. Put the barrel, just go straight in, the bolt head just goes straight on, situation no change. Use one of your existing short action magazines as a single load platform, or buy a single load platform and run 300 Norma in it. It ejects the empty, doesn't eject alive. You got to pull the bolt out because it is a long cartridge. But you can use the same gun again. You don't need to buy a new optic. You don't need to buy a new gun. You run the same thing and run a long action caliber and a short action gun. Switch it over yourself. So it's got a huge amount of versatility from that perspective as well.
So how big? Because I'm pretty sure you can't fit a 50 in there. But how big can you go onto it?
The 300 Norma and the 338 Lapua, that's our top end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but I suppose if somebody's serious about a SHATAC or that territory where they're wanting small artillery, it's a different proposition again. But a 300 Norma's in there with the understanding, So how big can you go then where you still want a magazine feed? Because you're right, I would agree for ELR or that long range stuff, you've got time because you're waiting to hear where the last one went. The only exception to that is a trick shot, maybe where you want 2 shots on the plate before you hear the first one land or something like that, which, hey.
Yeah, the hero shot.
Some of us want to do that. Yeah, the hero shot. But for people who do want a mag, what are we limited to when it comes to a mag? Is it a long action or short? What's the...
Yeah, that'd be that. If you wanted to go as long, then our long action is 3.850.
Yep. Okay.
So that full length, commercially available magazine size, the CIP version of the 338 Lapua, 3.850. So that's the big boy.
Yeah. Okay.
Same sort of rule applies with our short action. It's the longest available short action magazine that goes into that. So you can fit, the 6.5 Creedmoor sort of being the longest cartridge. 6.5 PRC rather, being the longest short action cartridge. You can magazine feed that. No worries at all. So we stretch it right out.
Which, I mean, a firearm that can go everything from a 223 or a 22 variant all the way up to a 6.5 PRC covers you for pretty much anything hunting in New Zealand without. It really does. We don't have a lot of elephants kicking through the bush. Or,
very few elephants around.
And if you're really debating shooting stuff at a kilometer bigger, it's a different thing as well, which, each to their own. But I mean, a 6.5 PRC, it's going to knock most things down. So,
so sort of at this point, we had all these fantastic ideas, which is
now you got to make it.
Now you got to, So the design for manufacture, it's called design for manufacture. So you design it with the purpose in mind of actually being able to produce it.
Yeah.
And some of it was relatively straightforward. We had a lot of learnings from our previous action venture that we could apply to this, so we could shortcut some processes. We understood how to do a fair wedge. which was really helpful. But throwing so many features into one system was extremely challenging. It's just, there's just so much going on in such a small space. And the primary challenge came around the buttress thread bolt head design. Incredibly complicated to machine, the bolt head and the internal thread on the barrel extension, incredibly complicated to machine, and the physics that go with it under firing pressures. So coming up with a mechanical safety, fail safes and bits and pieces like that. And we sort of coined this. We coined more rules as a result of the development of this project. So you've got to remember, this is 6 years ago we started this project, 6 or 7 years ago. So relatively young in the company's career, company's existence, especially for the really technically advanced stuff. So every day you're coming up against brick wall after brick wall after brick wall, if not multiple per day. And we were told by some of the industry, like really leading industry CNC operators, programmers, and all that basically saying this component is not machinable. You're going to have to 3D print it. And I'm never one to shy from a challenger. And where there's a will, there's definitely a way. So we really got after it, and of course we achieved our goal, which is great. But coming up against these brick walls and these challenges, or what were termed problems back then, multiple per day, and we just the amount of money and resource that we threw into this is just, I'd hate to think. And I look at it now and I say, if I knew what it would take out of me to achieve, it would be a very, very hard decision to do it.
Yeah.
Hard decision to go through and do it again. And I don't think that, unless you're a really technically minded engineer and you've had a really close look at this gear, no one will appreciate what goes into each gun and the everything that's gone into it over the years. But anyway, we coined this rule. One of these rules that very much the same sort of thing how I mentioned about our attitude toward the term failure. And it's that the term that I spoke about, failure, and this one, that really underpin our culture of innovation and product evolution. So when you look at the word problem, we're coming up against problems. The definition of problem is that it's something unwelcome and that it's something harmful. So then if you're throwing like so much of your heart and soul into something, and then like several times a day you've got one engineer, another engineer, development guy saying problem,
can't do, problem.
You're getting can't do, impossible, just bombarded you. It's incredibly draining, incredibly hard to deal with. Losing a huge amount of sleep. My grays were just coming through. I was, rich head of hair before this. No grey hairs.
No facial hair.
No facial hair. This is just last night's growth, actually.
Since Project X was released, it's all just come back out.
Yeah. It's all come.
Somebody asked me if I started growing this again during the lockdown, the recent lockdown. I'm like, you've never tried to grow facial hair? This is not. Anyway, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so we this phrase. So then this problem, and I'm looking at this whole what it is that we're trying to achieve, and going deep inside myself and all this sort of good exciting terms that we hear on American TV. And what we did and what I did was take the term and then change the way that I perceived it and how I looked at it. So the word problem unwelcome and harmful is banned from our facility.
Yep.
No one comes to me and says, I've got a problem at work. No one. And the term we use now is challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I've come across a challenge because the word challenge presents and gives us the feeling of opportunity.
Yep.
It gives us the thought that we can add more value for our consumer. We can increase the quality. It brings up all of these good feelings. So that was it. Problem banned. There are no more problems. And the other thing, like the word problem, to me, I've always felt that a problem is something that you either can fix or maybe you can't fix.
Yeah.
And we can and we will fix it. So they're not problems. The word doesn't exist. So we changed our whole thinking. It's all around challenge, and we still face challenges. All businesses face challenges in all aspects of business, but we don't face problems anymore. So
that language. Yeah, language is very important. People can sometimes be flippant about it, but there are so many issues caused in the world by the misuse of language, and it's unfair or unrealistic to think we're immune to it ourselves, even in the way we talk to ourselves. So that's very true. That's simple, and it's brilliant. That simple change of the word problem to challenge. You're right. The connotations that come with it are very, very different. And while some people are like, oh, it's kind of gimmicky to ban those words, but it's like, no, if you get into that habit of catching yourself every time you say something. I've got a little girl that occasionally calls herself stupid at the moment. I don't know where she's picked it up, but it's like, no, one, you're 5, so you can't do all the things that dad or the grown-ups around you can do. That's not it, but you can learn. It's an opportunity to learn. But please don't call yourself that, because you're not. That's definitely not what the case is. But yeah, another good example as well from our last conversation of how you create a good culture. And we could probably all ban a few words in our own lives if we actually stopped and thought about it.
Yeah, and that, these phrases are hugely important to our company culture as well.
So when you're doing this development, are you doing prototyping at this stage, or are you still doing everything in CAD design? You're actually prototyping, because things have changed these days. And I suppose when you were doing that, were you 3D printing, or were you like engineer? You're actually printing at that point, because there was a time. The time before printers was even.
It was a dark time.
It was yeah.
I tell you, man, that we come up with these amazing ideas. Wicked. We generated CAD, computer-aided design, so 3D models on the computer of each component, and we're like, look at this thing. It's this and it's that, and it's credible and it's disruptive, and we're all, everyone's jacked up and all this, and then so we're like, right, let's print them, and we print the bolt handle, and that threads into the cocking cam. Then we print the bolt body, and we dovetail that, and then we bolt head, receiver barrel extension, everything. We've got this fully printed, completely cyclable action.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is shit. Like, it was unbelievable how you could look at a model and just go, oh, perfection. But then when you held it in your hand, I'm like, there's a sharp edge here. That doesn't look right. That taper at the back's too short. There needs to be a notch there. When you lift that needs to look nicer there. And it was just all these little cosmetic things fell straight out of it. The fit and feel of it. I know it's, you're talking plastic components, but things just didn't feel right. And this, so we, and like you say, the time before printers really did limit how your development speed. And that was something that was really remarkable, because we never sort of really, I guess we didn't really truly appreciate the power of it until you took something so big and complex, printed it, and so many things and development and evolutionary sort of features fell out of the result of printing it. So, yeah, love the 3D printer. Love it.
I mean,
Love it. Love it.
it's not
Love
to
it.
say, yeah, it's not to say there's no there's still cost involved with setting that up and everything, but certainly the ability to start printing and prototyping stuff relatively cheaper and quicker,
Mm.
but you do probably more iterations of it as a result anyway. So I don't know if it makes each iteration maybe quicker, but you do more of them.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
know, it's yeah, it's like reloading. You don't save money, but you do get to shoot more. Is almost the theory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I still don't think actually the economics are quite right on that either. But it's anyway.
If you think about your own time,
Yeah, no.
then you're
Never
out.
never include your own time
Yeah.
in those
Yeah.
calculations.
Turn the phone
Yeah.
upside down.
Yeah, I did that spreadsheet once, and we turned that field off. We're not even going
Yeah.
to put that in there. That's
Straight through the
that's
shredder.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, that's all good.
Yeah. So
yeah, you're printing the prototypes off. You got the engineering. Roughly, how long did that stage take? Like, do you know?
man, I've got no idea. I
Yeah,
couldn't put a
it's
time
all a
on that
blur.
now. Yeah, it's all a distant memory that I'd prefer to stay as distant. I tell you something really, really cool that we did do during that phase. Once we got sort of further through and we printed these components, we had a customer. We have a customer, Peter Shakes, an extremely, extremely talented jeweler from Wellington. And we were going back and forth, and as far as selling product and selling him stuff and doing stuff. And I don't even know how we got onto it, but I must have just been talking to him. He will probably remember. And he said, "Oh, I can make you those bits. I can cast you those bits.
Oh, okay.
So you've got more like sort of the proper weight and a bit more of a better
Yep.
feel about it."
Yep.
So yeah, he cast us like bolt heads out of brass. Yeah, like
Nice.
making the molds, printing the molds and all that, and casting the parts out of brass. So I've actually still got them. I've got bolt heads and barrel extensions cast out of brass. So you get and that gave us another really tactile
Yeah.
go at what it is that we were trying to create. So that was cool.
And a future line of jewelry by the sounds of it as well.
Yeah, it's modern. It's very modern. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that was wicked, man. So like we did all sorts of cool stuff. We really the whole experience. I shouldn't be too dramatic about the challenging aspects of it. It was an amazing experience. So then we start.
Oh no, but anyone who's been involved with the fabrication or manufacturing will understand there's a thrill of bringing this product because it's something you're creating. It's a creative. People don't necessarily get it. Everyone goes, "Oh, I'm not a creative person, but I'm an engineer and I make these products." Like, well, I don't see a lot of a difference between that of someone who writes music. In some ways, it's still something inside of you that you are bringing out into whatever process it is. So it's a creative process,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's challenges along the way, but that becomes part of the fun as long as you frame it that way, because it's fun getting over those challenges and seeing that progression.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm a real firm believer of pain plus reflection equals progress.
Yeah.
That's
I think that's the thing.
That's
If you're seeing progress as well, you can see the point. It's when you're banging your head against. Was there a point where you felt like you're banging your head against a wall at any point, or did it always seem? Yeah,
absolutely.
And how did you get past? We're going back to the business talking about. How did you get past that point? Because that's like if you can see progress or improvement, you can keep on going. But when you're like, okay, this is actually that day or that week or that time passes where there hasn't been that resolution, or you haven't overcome that challenge, then what did you do?
Yeah, I mean that I can speak to that quite well, and
And I promise we'll get back to guns at the end of that as well.
Yeah. But long story short, it's bloody tough. There's I sort of touched on this last time actually. I can cope with it, in my opinion, pretty damn well because I'm so big picture focused and big picture orientated. Looking out here, working here, looking way out here, going, this is what it's going to be like. This is what it's going to be like. Awesome, cool, exciting. Just get this done, man. Just and then other times when I'm finding it really challenging or just frustrated or whatever, it came down to you've been doing this a long time and you've overcome a great many challenges. Excuse my language here. Bite the fuck in and get it done. You know, and that there was some really had to give myself a good stern talking to at times, because it was really tough, man. Really, really tough. But yeah, in the end, we got it down to. Yeah,
I think the thing is as well is if you're banging your head against something as well, but you can think of that bigger picture, then at some point you also go, well, I'm doing this, but if I want to get over there, I could also do that and still get there. I don't have to, I can look at an alternative way to get there, because the point is the end result. The point is not necessarily this little detail that may not work. Let's see if we can twist that a little bit and then we're back onto our path for it. But if you get lost in that minutia, I suppose that's where people can get into that lock.
Yeah, I speak when I'm talking to people that I work with in business. Some of the stuff that I harp on, and guys watching this that I've worked with will probably start blocking their ears. They would have heard it this time so many times. But if you look at the six, I think that it's got lots of different names, but the 6 basic human needs. There's 6 things, and everyone has 3 of those that prioritize how they work. So you've got love and connection, progress. Geez, this is embarrassing. There's 6 of them.
Food and shelter. Are we going the hierarchy of needs?
It's like that sort of thing. Contribution, significance. So there's 6 of these things. So once you understand, and you do Google it, don't listen to me. Once you see this list of 6 things, if you go, well, that word appeals to me, that word appeals to me, and that word appeals to me, have them in the top of your mind at all time, and then at all times. And then when it comes to prioritizing your day, it makes things a lot smoother. So I might be looking at these times back then, and okay, I've got this really big challenge that I'm fighting here. I'm going to go, okay, so that's sitting in, that's aligned with one of the 6 basic human needs that doesn't motivate me, doesn't give me energy. So I'm going to put that as the second thing that I'm going to attack for the day. The first thing that I'm going to attack for the day is one of these first 3 that motivates me, it jacks me up. So I'm going to do this job, whatever it might be. I'm going to get all fired up. I'm going to complete that task, and then I'm going to throw some of this gained energy at this challenge, and then the task after that is going to be something else that motivates me, and that's going to jack me back up,
Yeah.
So it's important to understand how you work when you're going through challenging times so that you can structure your day to best look after yourself, and so that your staff, who you're ultimately responsible for, and your stakeholders and your family get the best version of you. That's my lecture.
That's right. The last bit you covered off the follow-up question I had with it anyway, so that's perfect. Alrighty. Action. So you're at that point where is there more steps between there, or you're getting to the point where you've got yourself a working, we'll call it a prototype, or
Yeah, I mean, no, you just sort of rinse and repeat, pick the next part, so on and so on. Acquire the tooling, build the jigging. You can't go down to your local Bunnings and go, give me the stuff to make guns.
Yeah,
they don't sell them tools. So a lot of it, we
If
manufacture a
anyone
lot of it.
uses that line down at a Bunnings, please record it because I'd be intrigued to see how that works out for you at the moment. But
Yeah, especially if they say, "Oh, check aisle 13 while I call the police."
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm just going to call my manager and ask him if you just stay here.
could be a
Had
commercial
you?
opportunity they're missing.
You never know. At that point, had you put consideration for the stock as well, or was it the action and the barreled action first? Like, I'm sure there were considerations, but how far down the path were you in regards to stock design with this? How integrated was it with the?
Not particularly. Not
Yeah,
particularly. It wasn't something that we considered a huge amount. We had a few options from, multiple different stock manufacturers, imported, domestic produced, so on and so on and so on. And in the end, we sort of just, grabbed a decent stock. Once we had a working prototype,
yeah,
what we thought was going to be a working prototype, and then we grabbed a stock, chucked it in the mill, wrote a bit of a program, inlet it all out, sellotape the thing together, ready for range time.
yeah.
Um, and that's how we did it. It wasn't a pretty looking bit of gear, but good enough for some destructive testing and inadvertently some range work afterwards. We did some gnarly destructive testing years back. I mean, like, stand clear, piece of string around the trigger,
Yeah.
middle of nowhere with 308 charges that we believe were somewhere close to 90,000 psi at the chamber. The gun all braced up, and you think, okay, this thing ain't going nowhere. We're going to shoot into this bank. Everything's sandbagged up, hiding around a corner. I shouldn't even be discussing it. Pull the string, and then
You all had your high vis vests on. I'm sure that
yeah,
you would have
hard
been. Yeah,
hat.
cones were out. Yep,
Yeah,
all appropriate measures were taken. That's fine. Yeah,
and we literally see the rifle disappear past us. That's how much horsepower we were sticking in this thing. It was really quite remarkable, but it definitely not exactly what we had mentally prepared
sure.
to see,
Yeah,
but really cool experience, and all good, surprisingly good. But anyway, so yeah, we get through all that, and then yeah, it was just a matter of getting it on the range, and the iteration of the hybrid that's produced today versus what we shot back then, from a distance, they look remarkably similar. It's only when you get up, if you were to get one side by side, that you notice all the subtle changes and all of the product evolution. We've simplified bits and pieces. We've removed certain um, assembly aspects. We've increased quality here. We've reduced labor here. Little bits and pieces. So, um, for example, the initial barrel clamp system was a 2-screw with a torque wrench. Now it's a 3. And we did quite a bit of work on engineering alignment theory. When you assemble two components and you have X times diameter as the minimum threshold to maintain alignment, 1.5 times diameter and things like that. And then when it came to the clamp, the spacing of the screws to make sure that you had 1.5 or more than 1.5 times D and all that sort of nerdy stuff.
sure.
So we did a lot of work there which is all return to zero related work. We machined up tiny little aluminium grommets to go through the side of the stock and anodize them black, little quality things. We used to bed every gun. Now we manufacture a aluminium mini chassis that's
Okay.
made and precision matched to the hybrid receiver, and we inlet that into the stock,
Yep.
which is we figure. Oh, I might be giving away a bit of the game here, but if you've got a gun with an interchangeable barrel, the next thing is, where's the interchangeable stock,
Mm.
or how do I put this into a chassis, or so on.
Yep. Yep.
So the thought is, if you've got a gun that's bedded together and you've got this, that bedding compound is brittle and it can be damaged quite easily, that, it's not designed that you take your action in and out of the stock 100 times.
Yep.
So we were concerned around longevity if we were to develop a chassis for the hybrid. So then, the mini chassis came about, partly to deal with future-proofing the design. Oh man, heaps and heaps of things. We changed the screws, we changed bolt release. Just we're constantly evolving it. And that the evolution led to the Project X. So we had a bit of demand, consumer demand, like, look, I think that rifle is wicked. It's exactly what I need, but and I really want it. Can you build me one of those Tikas that you build? I'm like, what? It's just like, yeah, it's so cool, but like, it's just a bit too complicated for me. I just want one caliber. I'm going to go down that path. So for a long time, we offered the hybrid, and we offered the Tika, what we call the Tika Retro, full carbon, bolt fluted, da-da-da-da-da. And then when COVID started to sink its teeth in, the price of everything keeps going up and up and up. And it got to the point where we're like, we could seriously look at producing a variant of the hybrid that would be cost competitive with the Tika. So we had a good look at it, and we were like, man, it's dangerously close as far as where the project, which is now called the Project X, would fit in the market in regards to the pricing of the hybrid. I mean, regarding the pricing of the Tika Retro. So they're dangerously close in price. But then when you look at the Project X, you've still got the advanced primary extraction feature that the hybrid got. You've got the integral Picatinny rail. You've got the integral recoil. So it's the same sort of money, but so much more feature rich than what the Tika Retro gun. So,
which is the Tikas are still a great action, and amazingly, America finally seems to be catching up on that fact.
Yeah.
But then the hybrid, the guys have handled those and stuff. There's another. You're into a custom. I don't know what the correct term. Become a custom, semi-custom action, whatever you want to call it. A premium action, which is a different league again. So,
but yeah, so we looked at doing this, and then we were like, well, how can we sort of, if we're going to go fixed barrel gun, how can we capitalize on this design change even more? And then we said, well, it would ring true and be wise to make it closer, a lot closer to the likes of a Remington 700 footprint. So we have more stock options, just the same theory as the trigger.
Yeah.
Try and match the footprint as best as possible, so then we can chuck it into your KRG chassis or MDT chassis or whatever they might be. So then we chopped and changed, quite a bit, especially up the front end where the barrel clamp system that was all removed and changed. But yeah, we were able to keep that full length, sort of 2-inch long barrel extension, and that 1-inch long tenon thread. So we've got a huge amount of support, barrel tenon support. And the first one we built a prototype gun, which was a long action steel barrel, heavy steel barrel, 300 PRC with a big suppressor on it, sitting in a KRG Bravo.
Okay. Yep.
And I'm like, like all these things, we give them to Ian and just say, hey, evaluate, he's product evaluation, evaluate this thing, take it to the range, factory ammunition only. What can it do? And I spoke to him a bit about it, and he's like, man, it goes good. It goes real good, really accurate. And I'm like, yeah, cool. We'll do a bit more with it, and da-da-da-da. And sort of time's passing, and he's like, yeah, yep. No, she goes good. And I'm still like, what's going on here, And then I'm like, are we done? Are we here? And he's just like, this thing is a laser. He's just out smashing stuff with it, burning through ammo. So he was shooting the 225 ELDM, Hornady ELDM load through it. And it's just like, tiny, like sub half MOA groups with this factory ammunition. We were shooting a KYL rack, know your limits rack, out at 600 meters. And the gong on the left is 4 inch gong at 600 meters, just smashing it, boom, boom, just blowing it off its chains. Just you couldn't miss. It was unbelievably accurate. So really, really happy with the interface between the Project X receiver and the KRG chassis, how their V block system inside their chassis is relatively similar in geometry to the mini chassis and the hybrids.
Okay. Yep.
So the marriage was just cock on. Very, very happy. And then, so for us to then mate a Project X receiver into a KRG chassis, it's literally we just lengthen one cut and increase the diameter of another cut and a little bit of work in the bolt handle area, and we're in. So we're calling it like a 90% fit.
Okay. I was going to ask when you said it's most of the way there, so it's a little bit of machining, and that's probably you'll probably find there are some things that will drop almost in, and other ones you just need to do a bit of work with. Which was with there are a few. Am I thinking it's some of the triggers? Some of the triggers out there are a similar thing. They're like, it's pretty much going to fit into any Remington design, but you might just need to mill a little bit away somewhere just for a little breathing room, because we're not going to make them as skinny as the actual Remington in this read for these reasons. So okay, cool.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, it's not like we're selling barreled actions and expecting guys to fit it into a stock themselves. So, for us,
that's true. You do actually have KRG sitting there anyway, so it's not like you're going to generally go, if you're going to chassis, it's going to go into a KRG. That kind of makes sense there.
Yeah. So it's opened up a whole new sort of shooting avenue. One of our guys that we shoot with a lot and we look after, Anthony Colley from the Bay, incredibly talented and dedicated shooter, both the long range stuff, the PRS stuff. He's into it. I used to, I've done okay over the years in the occasional shooting competition, but he just beats the shit out of me without any issues now. It's really embarrassing. But he's now like Voodoo 22 trainer. Take the stock off my Project X. I can put the stock on that and just swap it between each gun. So it's got its whole own modular life that you can give to it. Same thing, you can do a carbon stock on it and a Whiskey 3 fully adjustable, like the one you just wrote about. Well written, by the way.
Thank you.
So that's where we're at with that. It's growing really good. We released it and then lockdown, so it's been a bit. I won't go there, but so that was a little bit of a shame. We've got
it's just a good excuse for a re-release, mate. It's the post-COVID re-release.
Yeah, and we could develop an entire or start our entire marketing campaign journey for it. But the guns are selling themselves really quite successfully. For example, we had one of our clients, we'll say overseas, and
go off overseas. Yep, sure.
Yeah, they were overseas. And they just this is like 2 weeks ago maybe or something like that. They said, here's our latest hybrid order, and we're like, yeah, that's all meant, and we send them through deposit invoices and all that good stuff, and then next thing they're just like, whoa, pump the brakes. What is this?
What is this thing?
Yeah. And I'm like, Project X, man, you guys don't know about this yet? It's been, And they're like, right, cancel that order. reissue this one. All the hybrids I want, this, that, whiskey 3, carbon, so it's just like, so I'm kind of just like, how much more marketing campaign do we need to do? Because you've got guys looking at the hybrid and inadvertently they're stumbling into it and then making a judgment call based on which system suits them anyway. So we're not too emotional about it. It's working pretty damn well from a marketing perspective as it is. I mean, we need to be a little bit conscious as to how many guns we're selling. We don't want this massive backlog,
Yeah, well, that's all. It's lovely to have all those orders sitting in the system, but if your back orders get to the point where people start getting titchy about it, it's you're right. It's a balancing. It's people have done it in the past where they've just ended up with like years and years of back orders, and it becomes vaporware. People start talking about this vaporware, and it's like, no, you get them into the hands, and they'll just keep on coming. It'll just keep on coming. You were saying some people were, however, and this will happen more, but we're seeing the Project X and then ending up going for the hybrid anyway.
Yeah, it's funny, because again, it takes a while for them to realize how the hybrid fully benefits their application.
Yeah,
because when we're talking to people about, I'm talking domestic market.
yeah.
When we're talking directly to our consumers, we're talking about a gun where like we're trying to harmonize with this person. You tell me your vision for what it is you're trying to achieve, and I will offer you the best solution. I'm not going to twist your arm and just hammer you into buying the most expensive thing that we produce. But if you inadvertently end up going there, then I'm sure you can justify it to yourself.
If we find ourselves there, that's fine anyway.
Yeah, yeah, and because it's like I hate. It's like, oh, I want to buy. I'm thinking about building a custom rifle. Man, you should buy the hybrid.
Yeah,
it's like, you don't want to do the hard. I just want to. We're not forcing it on you. We want to offer the thing that's perfect for your application.
Yeah, and now with the Project X, you have the different, not the flavor, but almost a different philosophy where people sort of want that one barreled action, for lack of a better term, but do want to maybe change their stocks around for different purposes rather than it necessarily being focused around switching different calibers for it. And I think I've talked to you, I find myself a little bit more in that camp of, it's not necessarily caliber. A lot of it for me, will become down to overall weight. I just want a heavier gun, say, for competition, and a lighter gun for it. So then that notion of the Project X that you drop into a lighter weight stock or something for hunting duties, but then put it into heavier. I mean, you're never going to have anything as light as a light, although separate question maybe later on about carbon barrels for competition. It's a different thing that's been changing a bit. But yeah, regardless, now it can be just a bit of a different philosophy. But I still think for a guy who's wanting a dedicated hunting rig and occasionally wanting to compete with it, and maybe doesn't want to go full on chassis route, yeah, it's pretty hard to go past that hybrid option. And I can see why once I started talking with you, understanding some of the features in the Project X, and then went, well, I can have all of that and swap the barrels over. And I'm less worried about having it in a KRG, the carbon fiber stock, which is a fantastic stock anyway. I can see how that could be a pathway. And if people aren't that pathway, then now you've got the Project X. So you don't need to guide them. It's just a case of figuring out which is your pathway, which is the way you're thinking, and they'll just find their own kind of home for it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, in the hybrid has a, from a, if you just went, I'm just a hunter, that's all I want it for. I just want a hunting gun. It's like, yep, fine. And ultimately you make the decision. Here are the options. This is our recommendation. You make the decision. But we try and lay out all possible scenarios. So you get guys who will travel from way up north to way down south, and they want to do like a 2-week trip based out of Arrowtown, Queenstown, in and out of the hills, here, there, everywhere, shooting anything and everything. There is nothing better than taking your hybrid box, which is like, this big,
Yeah.
tiny case, and it's the equivalent of 2 long-range precision rifles in one little case. We took when we first started attending SHOT Show with the hybrid, we took we had guns over there, but we took a demo gun as well, 2 years in a row. So 2 years in a row, traveling through 6 flights per trip. Not once did anybody say, "Hey, man, you need to put that gun through such and such."
Right.
No,
Yeah.
and like we just walk through. No one, I mean, it came to the point where we're like, "Hey, this is actually a gun. Where do I need to go for this?"
Yeah,
And they're
we
like,
better declare something.
Yeah. So it's incredibly convenient, and you can have your 300 WSM and shoot reds, and then you've got a few days where you just sort of on the farm and just bung your 2 to 3 barrel in and just go wholesale smashing rabbits. So that for guys who make big hunting trips out of their holidays, it's massively versatile purely from a hunting perspective.
Well, and then you've got the opportunity where you're going to go to a field shoot or something like that, or shoot some gongs or do a bit of steel shooting. You can put in a 6.5 of some flavor or something like that.
Mm.
And it's I think it's important for guys to. I think we talked about it. No, sorry, I was talking to Chris Way about it day before last, that people need to. I always ask people when they're building something, like, what are you going to use it for? And they give you this big list of things. It's like, okay, well, now can you tell me what percentage are you going to use it for? Because if you actually think you're going to be using it honestly 90% of the time on a range or at a competition, and maybe you want to go hunt with it occasionally to justify the purchase, so that's one thing. But if you're actually realistically going to be hunting with it 90% of the time, but you might want to go with your mates to the occasional comp once a year because you enjoy going, but you're not, then that's a different path. And it's also important to just kind of clarify what your end use is and be honest to yourself about it. And I think for a lot of guys doing that, that hybrid becomes that option because you've got both ends for your hunting side, and you can just put we'll call it a competition caliber in there as well.
And then you get the situation where there's this massive internal argument. It's like, no, I'm not going to get into competition shooting. I'm a hunter through and through. So I want one gun. I want the Project X. I want it in this caliber. I want to shoot tar, and that is me. But I could shoot a competition.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do this. It might be fun. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of when I'm doing the licensing, guys always ask me, do I need a big safe? Can I get away? Can I get away with a rack, or can I do this? And I'm always like, look, we all start thinking we'll just buy a gun, but trust me when I say that you won't. I always thought I'd just have a rifle for hunting because I was just going to get it in for hunting. But it's like, but it won't. So assume that you're going to need a bit more space. But maybe I could also say, unless, of course, you plan on getting a hybrid, in which case you can just get a smaller safe because you're only going to need it for that, and you won't need to have as much storage space. So maybe that's a justification. Buy a smaller safe and buy a hybrid.
It's easier to hide the rifle quantity from your wife. That's another really good, we hear all the time. Like, I can just stick barrels, just stack them up in a corner, open the door and the barrels are hidden. No one cares about that. And they just got one gun. Yeah.
Oh dear, it's life hacks now. We're getting into all life hacks.
That is not the intention of the hybrid design. But
should have put a disclaimer at the front. Hey, ladies, guys, don't let your wife watch this show. This is not what,
Yeah. Wear your headphones quietly in the corner.
The Project X. I mean, I think that's. Is it feasible to wedge a switch barrel into the Remington footprint, or is it just something that physically is going to be impossible?
It's the material is just not there.
Yeah.
It's there are concepts, as in concepts for a second iteration hybrid wherein that may be able to occur, but it's we're talking way like 10-year plan
Yeah, yeah.
type stuff.
And I can see there's some physical. There's always going to be, it's not, you're not going to have a straight drop in Remington footprint that's a switch. There's going to have to be some work somewhere. That's logical. I understand that. So.
Yeah. The way that I see it doing, I mean, the way that I sort of see it going, obviously you're talking a cylindrical action with no projection on the underside. So it needs to match that Remington 700 footprint, like you say. So the only way to do it, well, one way of doing it that is sort of rolling around in my head would be that the barrel extension has a mechanism on the inside between the barrel tenon and the barrel extension on the inside, wherein when you slide it into the receiver and it locates on its top dead center locating lug, you twist it and there's a ratcheting expanding mandrel in there. So that's what blows out and takes up that clearance in the receiver. But therein lies a huge amount of challenges. And how do you manage? How do you the torque setting on it alone?
Yeah.
Not to mention the complexity of the design. How do you get it to release? How do you get it out?
Yeah.
If it's got a ratchet and click up, then you got to get it out. So I mean that would kind of be the only way that I see it going. But with all of that complexity with the internal ratchet system, you're getting small on usable diameter above your chamber. So there may be caliber limitations and bits and pieces like that. I mean, I think it would be so cool, man. Like you grade a barrel, done. It takes quick detached barrels or interchangeable barrels to the next level. But man, crazy stuff.
Oh, but that's what keeps. I imagine partly it's those ideas kicking around in your head that kind of keep you going and going. All right, where's to have your design in your head, but at the same time going, oh, but that's a 10-year plan. Is a pretty mighty thing,
Yeah. So. Many a goal to conquer before I think we need to start getting too serious about generation
whatever
10 hybrid or whatever it might be. Yeah.
So the other question I have to ask, you're left-handed.
Right, so we're just going to finish up now. How do we turn this off? Yeah. No, I tell you, the thing is, like, we get a lot of people saying left-handed hybrid, left-handed Project X, left-handed. I'm left-handed. I shoot right-handed hybrid. But there's a big demand. But then we've also got so it seems like a good idea. But then we go, what's the conversion rate?
Yeah.
If we've got 50 people saying, man, if you like, and that's what everyone says, if you made left-handed hybrid, I'll buy one tomorrow. Righto, so we build 50 left-handed hybrids for our 50 potentials. How many of those guns are we actually going to sell? Because that development cost, that we've got to cover that somewhere along the lines and from somewhere. It's strange. We have never ever once been asked for a left-handed variant from any of our export clients. It's only our domestic consumers that have asked, but the demand is quite high. So,
well, look, I keep on asking because I know I can wind you up with a very simple question, but I'm also aware of the commercial realities, because people might go, 50 guns is, that's quite a good, it is, but you don't just put the bolt on the opposite side. There's the fair bit of tooling and setup and everything that's involved.
Yeah.
And while you say that, everyone's a left-handed hybrid as well, but at the same time, for a lot of it, we've had this discussion. I can shoot right-handed guns quite happily. Where I want a left-handed gun is almost a niche of my left-handedness is for those oddball barricade shooting and stuff like that. So that's even actually realistically probably a smaller number again that are like who need it for those purposes. And it's a numbers game, which is understandable as well.
Yeah. So. And I tell you, So we have our monthly senior leadership team. So our top four. I spoke a bit about this last time. Our top four senior members of staff, and the senior leadership team notes go out tomorrow. So they go out a week before, so everyone can familiarize themselves with what's been discussed, so we don't shag around and they're just like going and explaining everything. And I'll tell you that left-handed guns is on the list. So it's never made it onto the senior leadership team notes before.
There you go.
So it is a start.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm dancing around this topic right now. Nothing is consequential or set in stone in it. But there needs to, there is a conversation to be had about it.
Yeah.
Now, but when we look at everything we do and all the development and all of our costs, and we look at our profit and loss and our financial statements, which we monitor closely like a good business should. You have your net profit percentage. Most businesses operate within that, sort of that 3 to 7% mark. A really clued up, really wealthy operating businesses will get as high as 10% net profit percentage. And I'll tell you right now, if we're operating around that sort of 10% figure, yeah, we'd make 22 conversion kits and left-handed guns, and I'd be swimming in CNC machines and mattress full of cash. But the reality is that no matter how kick-ass you can make a business look, things are not easy right now.
Yeah.
It's a challenging time to be in business. It's a challenging time for small business owners in general. It's a challenging time for the trade. So where people should be in times like this, investing heavily in innovation and development and evolutionary product and all that sort of stuff, it is definitely not easy. Not easy to do so. But it's on the list.
So we just need everyone to go out and buy those right-handed Project X's and the hybrids and everything, and just bump those numbers up so we can get you up, so we can get our lefties on the way as well.
That's it. That is it.
There's my big pitch. Can all the right-handed people support us lefties, please? Call to action.
And I tell you what, when we do it, because like when I was young, I shot left-handed guns, left-handed bolt throw guns, and the discrimination was appalling. $100 more than a right-handed gun. I've never been so insulted in my life. You're scraping every dollar you can to buy something out of a magazine, out of a hunt fish catalog, and you go in there. The left-handed version's another $100, like mind-blowing stuff. So I've always said, if I'm going to produce a left-handed gun, I don't care. It's going to be $100 cheaper, which in the grand scheme of the cost of a hybrid or something like that, or $50 cheaper, it doesn't. Or $20, it makes no difference. I'm gonna make it. The price point is, I'll pay it myself. I'll pay the difference myself. I'm gonna make it that little bit cheaper just to get back at the industry.
I love your work.
For fun, just for fun.
Just for fun.
Yeah.
All good. So, I mean, have we covered, or have we not covered anything off on the hybrids or the Project X's?
I mean, I think we've gotten pretty dangerous. I think, people are interested, that they know where to go to get more information. We're pretty damn accessible. I don't need to start dropping Facebook profiles and websites and stuff like that if people want.
They can just search your name. It's pretty easy. So
and
like I say, it's one for within the shooting and hunting industry. It is Dan Hardy, and Hardy rifles are a household name. It's good to know. No, that's cool, man. I think, I don't know, it's been a great chat, because it's been a great combination of the product, the technical side, and wrapping some just good business knowledge around it, man. So I think it's another great session.
Yeah, me too. So I've enjoyed it.
Is the Project X? It's up. People can go get them now. I'm sorry, I should have actually looked at your website to like do this thing called research prior to the interview, but I just talk to you. I mean, there's people I talk to people like, well, I don't always do big amounts of research. I just contact them and go, I'm just going to have a chat to you directly. So,
yeah. No, yeah, it's available. We're building guns every day. You know, Project X's are moving through the press, as it were. Not that we're spitting one out per day. It's nothing crazy. But they're 100% available. I actually think off the top of my head, and it may be on the website, but in the last couple of days, we actually finished one for stock, like an in stock, on the shelf, ready to rock and roll, finished gun. Could be wrong, but there's usually, we try and have like 5 to 8 kick-ass guns ready to go for that person who just needs to have something exciting there and then. And I have a feeling that there is one Project X that may have snuck its way onto the rack. So they're available.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Dan. Thank you very much. And well, no, people don't need to email us to correct about the specific gravity of aluminium. We confirmed that mid chat, so we got it good. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome, bro. All right, man.
Cool, mate.
Till next time.
All right, mate. Cheers.